Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up. And today I am going to do a quick tutorial on the gilded leafing that we have in our new January to June catalog. It's actually pictured on the front of this beautiful catalog here in our little jar. And then you can also find it on page 33. There's a picture of what the leafing looks like. And it's part of the Fine Art Floral Suite. It's a beautiful suite of products. If you would like a paper copy of this catalog and you don't already have a demonstrator that you're working with, I'd be happy to send you one. So just shoot me an email at thefaithfulstamper@gmail.com, visit me on Facebook as The Faithful Stamper, or pop over to my website and contact me through there. And I'd be happy to help you with any stamping needs that you have, any questions you might have about products or techniques. I'm always happy to help. So as I mentioned, today's video is about the gilded leafing. And so there are 4 different ways that you can use this product in your crafting. The first way is with heat and stick powder. So this is our heat and stick powder. If you're familiar with heat embossing, it's very much the same concept. This just, when it is activated by heat, becomes sticky. And so that's what the gilded leafing is going to stick to. And so I'm going to grab my supplies here and show you how to do these different techniques. So to start with, I'm going to stamp directly on a piece of designer series paper. I have a piece of foam. Since my stamps are photopolymer, I need a little extra cushion underneath. So I'm just going to bring that over. And I'm going to use Old Olive as I stamp my images. And as I said, I'm stamping directly on my designer series paper. And to start with, I'm just using our colored inks. For the flower bud, for the first step, I'm going to use Rococo Rose and stamp here. And then this stamp is a 2-step stamp. And so I'm going to bring over some Versamark ink. This is a clear ink that we have. And this is the kind of ink you need to use if you want to use embossing powder or our heat and stick powder. And so I tend to go a little heavier. I'm still not pushing real heavy into the stamp pad. I'm just tapping it all over. Don't do CPR on your stamps. You'll end up with ink in places you don't want it. But just lots of tapping, because it's harder to see since the ink is clear, but you do want to make sure you have adequate coverage. So then I'm going to line this up. And I can tell, it probably doesn't come across on video, but I can tell that my ink is there. And I'm going to bring over a little tray here and put my heat and stick powder right on the image that I stamped. And hopefully you will be able to see this. I shake off the extra powder. I like to give it a little tap on the back side. And then, I'm not sure this is coming across well on the camera, but there is a little powder stuck to that ink, which is exactly what I want. So now I'm going to take a heat tool and heat this up. Now the trick is to not overheat your heat and stick powder. So you need just a little bit, probably less than if you were heat embossing. So I apologize for the noise, but I will be able to see the heat and stick powder change color on the paper. So it does it fairly quickly, and I don't want to do too much, as I said. And now I'm going to take a container. This is the container that the gilded leafing comes in, but I obviously can't put paper in here, so I keep mine in a little plastic container, and you can see I probably ought to get some more. And my little heat and stick powder is sticky since I heated it up, So I'm just going to press my paper down right into this bin, and this is why I recommend pouring it into a bigger container than this. You can see the size difference. Now, some ladies like to pick up the flakes with their finger and place them on top of their heat and stick powder, but I find that a little fussy. So I end up with gilded leafing everywhere as it is, so I don't really need it sticking to my fingers. So I put it right in this tub, and I have a sponge that I have dedicated solely to my gilded leafing. Now, you could use any kind of sponge. You could even use a blending brush if you have one that doesn't have ink on it. And so now that I've got my gilded leafing kind of stuck here, all I have to do is brush the excess off with my sponge. And then I can use what flakes go back into the container. And here you can see that I have that beautiful golden effect on my stamp. And I'm so happy this worked because it didn't work in a live video I did just a few minutes ago, even though I did the same thing. So this is the first step. Ooh. And don't move quickly and don't have a fan running when you've got your gilded leafing out, because you will have the gold flakes everywhere, glitter for days. So, as you can see, I'm just going to simply take this panel, stamp the congratulations, layer it on a card, and I'll have a card that looks like this. I'm not going to bore you with the assembly, but I wanted you to see that first technique with the heat and stick powder. Now there are other techniques. The second technique that I want to show you today involves using Terran Tape, basically double-sided tape. We have our Terran Tape, which I love very much. And so in order to do this technique, it does not require the heat and stick powder. It does not require a heating tool. I have a panel that is 3 3/4 inches wide by 5 1/4 inches tall. I stamped in black Memento ink. This is from the Floating and Fluttering stamp set in our January to June catalog I showed you at the beginning of the video. And I went ahead and colored it in with my blends. I got it all set to go. And all I did was take my Terran Tape and peel it off the roll and just lay it across my cardstock. Now, I will give you a tip. I used my silicone mat to lay it down so that my tape, as it overhung the edges, did not stick to my work surface. And then once I had all my stripes in place and I pressed them down with my fingers to make sure I didn't have any bubbles, I picked it up and then trimmed the edges with my scissors. And now I'm ready to go. So now all I need to do is peel my Terran Tape, the backing strips off the Terran Tape, to expose the adhesive. And once that's done, I always have one that's persnickety. There we go. So that adhesive is exposed, nice and sticky, and I'm going to do the same thing I did with the first card. Now I'm going to slide this down since I'm running low on my gold leafing. I'm going to flip that over and press it right into the gold leafing. Make sure I have it all covered nicely, which I do, and then again take my sponge and just rub it right across the strips so that all the tape is covered with that gold leafing. I have to say this is probably my favorite way to use the gold leafing. Just it sticks so beautifully to the tape strips. You could even run them around the edges of a panel and do the same technique. Gives you a beautiful look. And I just rub all the excess off with my sponge, and then I'll give it one more glide across with the sponge, make sure everything is nice and flat. Make sure I don't have any little pieces hitchhiking along here. And there you can see I've got these beautiful golden stripes. Now, all I need to do to finish the card, I'm not going to bore you with this tonight, but I'm going to take a rectangle die, run this through my cut and emboss machine, and then it will be ready to go on my card front. And you can see here, I have the beautiful stitch designs around the edges, including on the bottom of the stripes, on the sides of the stripes. So I just love that effect. It's so clean and neat. And obviously you can use these for any occasion. Just a couple more to show you. The gold leafing, not only does it stick to the heat and emboss powder and the Terran tape, it will also stick to our Stampin Seal. So our adhesive, our tape runner. So I am going to show you quickly how to do that. Now, I freehanded the first time when I put this together, and my stripes are a little crooked. That kind of bothers me a little bit. So a little tip for you, if you want to be a little more precise, is I drew a line with a pencil. I'm still probably going to be a little crooked. It's just how things work with me. So I'm going to take my Terran tape, or not my Terran tape, my Stampin Seal, and just run it right along that line. Flip it around and repeat in the opposite direction. Oh, I ran to the edge of my tape runner. That's okay. I'll show you on the end that did work. And it's still a little crooked, but that's all right. Again, same process. Take my rapidly emptying bin of Gilded Leafing and press it right in. I can tell that it's all covered. And again, my little sponge right across. And I just go back and forth with the sponge until it's nice and neat. And there you have it. So this isn't as clean and crisp as the Terran tape, but the process is the same. And so for this card, all I did was, once I got those stripes on the cardstock, I ran this panel through an embossing folder, so you can see it has a little more texture to it. And then I just built the card with the die cuts. And you can see I repeated the process from that first technique with the heat and stick powder on some of these flowers. Added a few accents, and I've got a beautiful card ready to go. Now there is one more technique that is my least favorite of the four, but it still works. And that is, you can take liquid glue, such as our Tombow glue, and use that directly on your cardstock or your designer series paper, and then again put it in your bin of Gilded Leafing. I will say this, it has a lot of coverage, but it's not my favorite look. The key, if you're using the liquid glue, is to think thin. You do not want big puddles of goopy glue because you're just going to have a mess. So I took the broad tip of my glue and I held it right to the paper and squeezed out just a little bit of glue. And then I went back with my finger and just rubbed over the glue a little bit. So there wasn't a whole lot there. And then I put it in the Gilded Leafing and then again brushed off with the sponge. And so this is the look I have. So there are 4 different options for your Gilded Leafing, depending on which look you'd rather have for your cards. If you want more clean and crisp, or if you want a little more abstract. And I wanted to show you just 2 more cards that I made. I have one in progress that's a great way to see how the heat and emboss powder works with the gold leafing. I'm going to turn this into a card and post it on my Facebook page, which is over at The Faithful Stamper. But I love the repetitive look of those brushstroke stamps. But getting back to the samples, this is a sample I made where I took Versamark ink and stamped this butterfly stamp on the panel, and then used the heat and stick powder and the gold leafing. And what I did was I cut a panel out from beneath this panel. You actually can't see it. I went one size smaller than this rectangle. And I used that on the second card. But you can see I used the gold leafing to stamp the background and the sentiment. And I just accented it with a die cut butterfly. This is gold foil and matching Blackberry Bliss cardstock. But then I used that smaller panel and created a second card. So I just popped it here on the card with dimensional, added some ribbon, and again, another die cut butterfly. So I hope you enjoyed that quick and easy tutorial on the Gilded Leafing. If you have any questions, as I said, you're welcome to contact me either through Facebook, leave a comment here in this video, or send an email to thefaithfulstamper@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'd love it if you'd subscribe and check out more of my crafting videos. Take care and happy crafting.